Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon of August 9th, 2020. I am pleased today to be joined by a panel of esteemed US Transhumanist Party officers, including our Director of Applied Innovation, David Shoemaker, our Secretary, Pavel Ilin, our Director of Visual Art, Art Ramon Garcia, our 2020 US presidential candidate and Director of Marketing, Charlie Kam, and our Director of Energy Issues, John Karatz. And with us today, we have two special guests representing the French Transhumanist Association, the AFT-Technoprog. We have Marc Roux, and we have Jean-Brice Allemand to talk to us about the reception of transhumanism in France, as well as the work of AFT-Technoprog in advancing transhumanist ideas and pursuing various international collaborations. So welcome, Marc, welcome, Jean. Let us begin. Marc, you have a presentation that you would like to deliver. We are all quite interested to see it.
Thank you very much, Gennady. I'm very pleased with this invitation. It's a first, I think, that we have the occasion to speak about the French Association front of so broad audience. I will try to give you some ideas of how things happen in France since something like 10 or 15 years. Just I have to switch to show the slides I have prepared. So just a little while here. And so I think that you will be able to see it. No. Here we are. So, first of all, I will talk you about the peculiarity of the French context. France, I think it's a country of contradiction. It's still a world pole in terms of biotechnologies, I think. You can think about, for example, this Karmat artificial heart, or Emmanuelle Charpentier, you know, the role she played, the development of CRISPR-Cas9, and at the same time, it's a pole of strong bioconservatism. One example, since 2004, France recognized a crime against human species. It's the only country, I think, in the world to do so. And if you practice or promote reproductive cloning or eugenics, they don't expect what is eugenics, but there is something called eugenics in the law. You face 30 years of imprisonment. In general, the vast majority of the media and various commentators, sociologists, philosophers, etc., have done a long and often caricatural presentation of transhumanism. Well, anyway, it's always, I've done with, transhumanism will be exclusively the emanation of big capital, be libertarian and scientific, especially from Silicon Valley, sure. And it will promise us a two-tier society where the super rich will monopolize enhancement technologies and impose the worst of dictatorships on the rest of the world. And I passed on the many critics who condemn transhumanism for bioethical, moral, or religious reasons, etc. And that's why we feel that we feel the need to repeat tirelessly that there is not only one transhumanism. There are several transhumanism, and not only this caricature that they are presenting to us. Well, in France, we even have groups who not only openly claim to be bioconservatives, but bioludists, and who doesn't hesitate to use not only propaganda, but intimidation or even aggression to try to prevent any debate. For example, you have this association which is called Pièces et Main d'œuvre. Anyway, they wrote these books, and you see they are using this sentence from Kevin Warwick about the chimpanzee of the future. I don't know if you remember this sentence. Anyway, these groups is able to go to they was able to um, to make us to avoid our participation to several colloquium, for example, by putting pressure on the organizer. And so they cancel our interventions by 2 times, or by their ideology, they influence other peoples who don't hesitate to put on fire Fab Lab, for example, so you can see until where they are able to go.
Now, if I may, we, for some reason, still do not see your slides, but I think the visuals here are helpful. So there may be some option that you can toggle so that we can see the visuals representing these hostile groups that you described.
If I go back like that, do you see the previous slide?
No, I think you need to enable the share screen function on your end.
Oh, I lost it.
Yes.
Okay. What about now?
No, unfortunately, we still do not see it. One option could be, Pavel, if you have the slides, we could give Pavel the host role and he could share them on his end.
Now?
Oh, yes. Now we see your slides. So
you didn't have it from the beginning.
We did not, but when it got to the visuals, I think it became important for us to be able to see. Yes. So these are representations of some of the hostility that transhumanism has faced in France.
Exactly. And you can see on the right, for example, a poster which was on the streets of Paris some years ago. Yes, stop transhumanism, and we are other such examples. I'm starting again. Sorry for that. The consequence is that it remains very difficult for officials, scientists, entrepreneurs, politicians, or other to openly present themselves as transhumanists. And conversely, researchers who fear to see their work morally condemned use the word transhumanism as a scapegoat. You know, transhumanists are the bad guys, not us. We are just doing science, even if they are doing exactly the same things. Well, yet for 4 or 5 years, the lines are slightly moving. More and more institutions are calling on us: university, public hospital, the National Society of Medical Ethics, Union of Entrepreneurs, etc. We were even auditioned and then invited by the French Socialist Party. And not only, but invited once at the National Assembly by a think tank to make our concrete proposals. I can say that some well-known scientists accept to work closely with us, like I don't know if you know, not this one, Miroslav Radman. It's a quite well-known international biologist, or Jean-Marc Lemaitre. It's another biologist which works on stem cell and reclaiming stem cells. So a few politicians have appeared to be open-minded to some transhumanistic ideas. I told you about the Socialist Party, for example, Corinne Narassiguin, who was the spokesperson of the Socialist Party 2-3 years ago, and now she's the number 2 on the Socialist Party in France. And Jean-Luc Mélenchon, it's a representative of the far left, if you want, but it happens to have citation which was for us clearly transhumanist, calling the idea that you see we can overcome death, for example, and this in the public debate on the TV for the previous presidential election. So it was quite clear opposition. In 2018, we were auditioned by the French National Ethics Committees as part of the revision of the bioethics laws. And for us, it was maybe much more important than those previous example I give, because this committee in France, it's really often followed by the politicians after that, after they give their advices. And last year, well, 2019 was a good idea. It was particularly good on this front in general, with invitation from the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Health, and hearing before a UNESCO commission in Paris. So you see that things are moving. And in addition, I can say that further sociological studies show that the French population as a whole, maybe it's in favor of the use, at least of the use of medicine in order to improve the condition of healthy people and not only ill people. I can show you this graph, which was from an increase, it was in 2016. And when the question is directly asked to the people, you see this is about the question about the use of medicine, even for healthy people. And the blue Arson bone shows 72. It's they think that it's a good thing to use medicine for enhancement. So the image is very different when you just read the newspaper and ask directly to the people in France. And other studies show that especially urban youth, educated people and well-off, mostly will be in favor of transhumanism. And the opposition, it's on the other part, so more older persons in the countryside, etc. We love that. I have to say that for the while, we meet a persistent refusal by the major and the big media. For example, even if we had now dozens and dozens of papers on different newspapers, radio, etc., we never reach to have any paper in one of the three most important newspaper in France, you know, Le Monde, for example, Le Figaro, etc. They never open their columns or invite us to their platform, and the same is right for the TV broadcast channel. And I have to say that we continue to meet a mistrust on the academic community as a whole. And the same for the entrepreneurs. They alternate between interest, skepticism, and cautiousness. It's very difficult to be clear. So we believe that, okay, while we'll still have a long way to go, but the underlying trends seems to be favorable. That's the first images I wanted to give you. Now, I want to talk about some sociological particularities. I think that we can explain this specific context paying attention to different factors. For example, in France, if you compare with British Island or America, there is still a kind of mistrust of new technologies. Um, it's not so clear, but I think that it's a result of a world history. Um, and then there is the I don't I don't go into details because it will be too long. But it's just a first idea. So second idea is the fact that transhumanist thought it had first developed in the Anglo-Saxon world. Not only did the French have little access, but it's because there is the language barrier, but moreover, there is this suspicion. Maybe it's they look like the last avatar of American intellectual domination. You know, they fear, and you have to have this in mind to understand some of the position you can encounter in France. And then you have some really problems with very problems of vocabulary. I saw that the term transhumanism, posthumanism, the word enhancement, when the French meet those words, they try to make some translation, or worst, they try to understand it with etymology. But I think that if we look at what, I don't know, Max Moore or Nick Bostrom was writing when they was talking about posthumanism, for example, this is not necessarily post in a Latin meaning after humanism. It's something which could be a continuity. It's a discussion. A lot of French commentators just took the words, make a straight translation, and have their own explanation, their own interpretation just from this straight translation. The same for the words enhancement. Enhancement. So you can't have a clear translation in French. You have to choose, and so it could be augmentation. But so you're putting the focus on the quantitative meaning. Otherwise, you will choose something like amélioration in French, improvement, and you put the focus on the subjective connotation, but you have not the whole meaning of enhancement. And we have those kind of difficulties, and we as transhumanists are obliged to try to explain very often those kind of little problems. And then you have the problem of the difference in sensitivity, I would say, to spirituality or even metaphysical discourses. Probably because France is a country that has been largely secularized. For example, you can use the term immortality in France so easily because you will have the accusation that you are falling in a metaphysical discourse or a religious discourse, and it will be a condemnation for a lot of French. So we was obliged to use other words or to other expression to talk about biological immortality, or to use the word amortality. Amortality, it's a word coined, I think, by the French sociologist Edgar Morin, and it means just winning the battle against aging and illness. But it's not a world immortality. So it's another kind of difficulty. And then we have to put attention from the outset to health issues, environmental issues, and above all, social issues. Which is why AFT-Technoprog quickly recognized itself in the thinking, I have to say it, of James Hughes, as he expressed it in his book, Citizen Cyborg, and all the ideas of techno-progressivism. And that's the reason why the little name of AFT is Technoprog. So with that, now I will end with some details about the association. Before the 2000s, there was almost nothing transhumanistic in the French-speaking world, I think. From 2002 to 2007, we had the small groups, les mutants, but it was groupuscular, and we have some books. I like to quote Rémi Sussan, les utopies posthumaines, was the one of the books for myself, which one I encountered the main ideas of transhumanism. It's for the French people, it's a really good introduction of the whole ideas, I think. From 2007 appears the French Transhumanist Association, Technoprog. It established itself as the organization of reference in France. I have the pleasure to say, because it's there from more than 10 years now. But we are also in other French-speaking countries. We are present in Belgium, in Switzerland, and some of African French-speaking countries like Cameroon or Benin, for example. The association was declared in 2010, but it's a detail. From its creation, it's important, I think, that to say that from 2014, its activity had started to grow. All the indicators grow steadily from 2014. 2014, it was the year where we was able to organize for the first time the Transvision colloquium. But from this time, our numbers, the different numbers grow like that. It was good until the 2017. And from 2017, we are stay at this level. That means that we are still about 100 number. When I say 100 members, I want to say 100 numbers. We are permanently up to date with their membership fees. Otherwise, the organization see that it's about 2,000 sympathizers, and this is stable now from 3-4 years. So with all this, I'll say that this movement, this energy, we was able to organize Transvision 2014. I have to say that for us, it was very important. It changed something. We have the pleasure to have, for the first time, a lot of journalists, something like 40 journalists had come. We had 5 crew films with this occasion, and a lot of papers, etc. So I still think that's the organization of such a colloquium. I say that it's already a part of the pot of Jean. Maybe it's a really good thing for a country that who try to help the transhumanist movement, I think, in his country. Well, I have to say that we have now some groups in different regions of France. Sorry, here we are. So and now it's much more than this map. We have correspondents in about 10 big countries, big towns in France. So it's not so bad. And yes, the previous slide was just to say that we have several books from members of the association. So this is a good help for the world communication. So, well, we are continuing our many activities now. In 2010, we have made an important decision. Our General Assembly decided to try to steer our action in more practical directions. Because since the beginning, I have to say that AFT-Technoprog, well, it was and it's remained mainly in the theoretical field. And we believe that in order to reach a wider audience, we need to be more practical. And so, for example, in the coming month, we plan to be partner of an implant party to reinforce our contacts with the makers, with the fab labs, and we plan to develop our own initiative as makers. That's I hope an important direction for the coming years. And finally, and you may be interested by this part, more and more pressing voices were heard within our association to get down to politics. Several members have been working for a few months to launch a transhumanist political party in France, with the aim of presenting a candidate for the French presidential election, which will be the next one will be in 2022. So in 2 years. So we will see that. I'm not so certain about nothing. But the group is already working for now 2-3 months. So okay, I hope that you will have some news about this project. And now, perhaps I don't know, can say that our association has reached something like a necessary size and maybe maturity to better contribute to the development of international transhumanism. I don't know. We will discuss about that. And one sign for me is that this year, and for the first time, we are fortunate to have 2 special delegates for our international relations in the person of Leonid. Sadly, it's not here tonight, and Jean. So I will let the words maybe to Jean, or I don't know if you want to ask first of all question about the presentation I just made. And so with that, I will avoid the share of the screen. And I think that is done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marc, for your presentation. I think we should provide a brief window of time for questions and comments regarding your presentation, and then we'll move on to Jean. What was interesting for me was to observe some of the differences in the societal environment that transhumanism faces in France versus the United States. What was interesting about your remarks is that it seems many French people have this instantaneous grasp of the etymology of the term transhumanism, and they're able to reason from the etymology to come up with a certain impression. That impression may not necessarily be accurate because they haven't read the foundational texts of transhumanism. They're not familiar with the explicit expressions of the philosophy, but at least that etymological knowledge gets them into the conversation. In the United States, what we face is essentially an unawareness on the part of large segments of the public. On the other hand, the kind of very organized hostility that you mentioned also barely exists in the United States. Our major problem is not intense public hostility toward transhumanism. We have a few conspiracy theorist circles, people like Alex Jones, whom ordinary, reasonable people do not take seriously. But those ordinary, reasonable people generally will be mildly curious if they're informed about what transhumanism is, but they won't identify it right away without a detailed explanation. So it's more of a blank slate in terms of their cognition of the term. And yet, when one speaks to them, many of them, not all, but many do get excited about the promise of emerging technologies. So our task has been to very gradually broaden this awareness. Now, there are some similarities too, in the sense that you mentioned among the French public, it seems that a majority, about 60%, are mildly positively oriented toward transhumanism. And I would estimate that is the case in the United States as well. And I think those people would take advantage of the technologies advocated by transhumanists if those technologies became available and affordable to the general public. Now, in terms of media and mainstream politicians, you seem to have an easier time with certain politicians actually explicitly embracing transhumanist ideas. This is very difficult in the United States because of the two-party system that we have. The Republicans and Democrats generally don't even want to acknowledge the existence of other political parties. So that is our biggest obstacle. And in terms of media coverage, it depends on whether the media outlets are aligned with the main political parties. If the media outlets believe it's their mission to promote either the left wing or the right wing of American politics, the Republican Party on the right wing, the Democratic Party on the left wing, then they will just stop covering anything about alternative viewpoints. We had an 18-candidate presidential debate for representatives of 8 minor political parties in Chicago on March 4th. And it got some coverage in alternative media. It was live streamed on the internet, but we did not have any mainstream media coverage for the debate because they don't like to give people any awareness that alternatives exist. So in France, you mentioned there is an incipient effort to begin a political party. My hope is you will have more sympathy among representatives of other political parties who see an alignment of goals and see the possibility of making certain alliances, at least for pragmatic reasons. So those are my observations. And if you have any thoughts in response, I'd be happy to hear them.
Yeah, just to say, for example, that we get in touch with the Pirates Party. We know that this is a possibility there. There are some acquaintances. And yes, we know some peoples in different parties. We are enough open-minded. For example, I was talking about the fact that actually it was 2 years ago the National Assembly voted for the new bioethics law. Well, the main reporter of the law was a member of the actual presidential party in France, a deputy Jean-Louis Touraine, and you can talk about him as something like a crypto transhumanism. It's very, very impressioning how far is able to go, but without nothing saying nothing really openly. But we know that we have those back doors, and other peoples, even in the government. For example, one of the previous how to say that state secretary was the companion of guys which has it still have a weblog and an organization which it started in Boston. I mean, he was in Harvard when they start together with his friend this organization, and now this person was in the French government. So we have those opportunities. But on the other hand, the fact is that for the while we didn't appear as anything political. So we think that they don't feel us as any danger. But we think that the fact to try to enter in politics, it will have this big risk that from a day to the other day, those peoples can start to see us as competitors. And so this is the question. Maybe the things will change in the bad direction.
And that is an interesting question to consider. One thought that I've had along these lines is that in parliamentary systems, it's easier to form multi-party alliances. So some more established parties may consider minor political parties to be useful allies. In the type of system that exists in the United States, which is essentially a plurality or first past the post system, each of the parties sees the others as competitors, and even say the Green Party is seen as a serious competitor by the Democratic Party, even though the Green Party espouses a lot of the same ideas and indeed goes further than the Democratic Party does. The Democratic Party has often fought to exclude the Green Party from the ballots because they don't want to, quote, split the vote. But I wonder, what is your assessment in France with regard to how conducive the French political system is to collaboration among multiple political parties?
Well, that's you're right. It's easier. It's easier in this direction, but you have to take care in which election you take part, because the logics are very different. If you try to participate to local elections or to national election or to European elections, each election has a different logics. So, for example, I think it won't be a good idea to try to take part on a local election. We have nothing to say at the level, so little to say at the level of a village or a little town. I think that it's possible to try at the national election for the presidential election, because it's quite open and you're not obliged to have a lot of candidates. You have just to have one candidate. Or on the other side, the other possibility is to try with the European election. As you know, in Great Britain, in Spain, in Germany, last year several candidates tried the chance. Okay, we wasn't ready for the previous European elections, and so that's the reason why we think that the next possibility will be 2022. But I want to add another idea, which was, and it's still in discussion inside the association and inside the group to try to organize the political investment. In France, there is a difference between to be organized as a party, which is a really specific kind of organization, and to be organized at what they say a movement. It's also an organization, a non-profit organization, but if you appear like a movement at the first step, you don't appear with candidates. And so you can wait even until the last time to declare a candidate, or very late to declare a candidate, or to declare that you will support a candidate. On the other hand, if you start immediately like a party, it's quite clear that you will have candidates, you will try to win some election. So we are not absolutely sure for the while if we will choose the party form or the movement form. No, between us, everybody's not don't agree in one or the other possibility. I think that's a movement. It's more easy. It's less dangerous, but sure, in terms of communication, it can be less attractive for the media, for example. So we have to choose. We have to think about it very well and make a choice at the moment.
Yes, and it's good that French law allows that flexibility, and an organization can be a movement up to the point when it feels ready to field its own candidates. That is quite a nice system in my view. But I do recognize your point regarding media attention. Indeed, I would say the main reason why Zoltán István founded the US Transhumanist Party was to garner that kind of media attention, because in the United States, a lot of people pay attention to politics, and even an unconventional political party that doesn't have a large probability of winning an election can still get a lot of coverage if its proposals are intriguing enough or different enough that some media outlets see it as essentially newsworthy. And that is what Zoltán was able to do. And we find the political party format allows us to get that consistent exposure. We're still getting interviews on a regular basis. We're getting articles published about us. And internally, we operate very much like an intellectual organization. We just have this outward-facing political front, so to speak, that we use to spread awareness of transhumanist ideas and policies. And really, we hope that politicians from other parties will pick up our suggestions and also help implement them. We're not against any of the American political parties, even if some of them believe they should be against us. We're actually quite willing to collaborate with anyone who advances our objectives. So now let's see if others on our panel have any questions for Marc or comments about Marc's presentation. Let's see. Art Ramon.
Yes, France has always led the world in fashion. Has there been any attempt to get with these fashion designers and trying to promote some transhumanism culture into fashion?
I'm afraid that there are really few artists or designers that are clearly linked with directly with transhumanist ideas. There are some, but the ones which are involved are not at all from the most the well-knowns. So you almost can't hear at all in the media about what they are doing, or you have to be interested in a very or quite a geek manifestation or events to find them. We try to promote them as we can, but there is still this difficulty for them that some of them or all of them, I don't know, knows that if they clearly appear like transhumanists, they will have to face all this caricature I was talking about at the beginning. So some of them, or a lot of them, can try to say the same things, just within using the the T words. And for us, the problem is it's not publicity. It's not publicity at all. So it's the worst publicity. They don't talk about the association. They don't talk about transhumanism. So they speak about transhumanism with their work, but it's not exactly the same things. And so about designers, for example, well, I don't know, but I don't see anyone.
Well, things can be said visually, and sometimes that could be a way around difficult words. So just something to consider.
I think about one person which made a really good work is Thierry Mutin. Thierry Mutin is a designer and is an artist. Well, he works almost all his career in America. he designed beautiful buildings or atrium at the entrance of buildings in New York, when we was in Houston, I mean, and in his works, he used a great lots of transhumanistic ideas. And now he retreats. He came back in France, and from 2 or 3 years, he tries to show in France what he was doing in America with so much success. But sadly, for the while, and even I know that he was trying hard with 2 or 3 projects, I don't see any results. So it showed that even for some people with a big career, with a name, it's still difficult.
And Marc, for the benefit of our audience, how do you spell his name?
Mutin, M-U-T-I-N, M-U-T-I-N. Mutin.
M-U-T-I-N. And the first name is T-H-I-E-R-R-Y, correct?
I-T-H, yes, T-H-I-E-R-R-Y, Thierry.
All right, and I have posted his name in the chat as well. So thank you for mentioning him. That will definitely be of interest to those who wish to find out more about transhumanist-inspired design, at the very least. Now, do we have any other questions or comments from the panel for Marc? Pavel.
Yeah. Yeah, in US, the situation with the perception of the transhumanism is a bit different. In US, lots of people fully support transhumanist ideas, but they're afraid to express it in public because they could face possible consequences or even persecution. People afraid to lose their jobs, their businesses, their investors, and so on. Even famous people like I don't know, Andrew Yang or Elon Musk, I think they are transhumanist, but even if they working on some technologies such as AI, or they advocating for things like a basic income, they still avoid the term transhumanist because of the self-censorship, because they're afraid of the expressing some non-conventional terms. Yeah, and that's very sad. And besides toxicity of the outside world, transhumanists are famous for inner conflicts, which usually hurt the community as a whole. And Marc, how the French and broader European transhumanist community looks like, and how do you think we could not necessarily avoid the conflicts, but to channelize this energy people have in more constructive way?
So it's 2 different points for me, and the first point, it's very important. I will have myself a question about the first points, but I have to answer I want to answer the second one, how to avoid divisions in general, even inside the movement. Yes, it's a big question, and it's an important question for us from the beginning. But well, for this part, maybe the cultural French context has had helped us a little bit. Yes, I have an hesitation. I think that it's still a little bit touchy, and I can feel it even when I'm speaking with some American representative of the movement. Well, I've followed different phases that the US Transhumanist Party passes on the past month. I know that things wasn't easy at all. So how to say that? Well, I will say that what I will say, it's my own position, first of all, okay? Okay, in the first time, sure that we can say that it's preferable to try to be consensual, and because we have so much to just can you hear me?
Yes, we could hear you.
Okay, because I have the images was frozen, so I have an hesitation. Sorry, tell me if there is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So that was for me, for example, the position of the first transhumanists historically. I think I don't know about Faridun Esfandiarian, the idea of to be upwingers, which was it's an idea that Natasha is still, I think, as I understand, very in favor of, and not trying to. Sorry, to choose a trend or another. And I agree, and we have tried to follow, and we are still quite we pay attention to this problem until now. But on the other hand, for my part, and you know what, having in mind the example of the ecological parties in Europe, not only in France, I follow them in Germany and Italy from something like 30 years. And I think it's quite interesting to make the parallel between the history of ecological parties in Europe and what could be the evolution of a transhumanist party. I think that's what we can see, or maybe we can expect some analogies between the two, the both. At the starting point, the ecological parties was exactly saying that ecology is transversal. You haven't to be right or left to be ecologist, and ecologists are saying think about all the society, all the party can embrace ideas, etc. They enter in politics about at the end of the 70s and the start of the 80s, depending on the countries. Okay, at the starting point, there was exactly in our position now what you was saying about the position of the other parties or the media, ignorance, etc. At the time, they start to reach a certain level, which was something like 2, 3, and then 4, 5%. And so the other party starts to pay attention. But at the same time, really quickly, the deep traditional political divisions split them. And it was quickly impossible to them to stay unite as they was thinking at the starting point. And after their first wins, clearly at European elections in 1994, no, 84, sorry, 84, we saw appear different ecological party. And it was clear that some was more lefty parties and other was more rightist parties. And so they fall in this, you can't say the same pitfall, or but maybe there is a logic behind that. And well, from my point of view, I think that as transhumanists, we have to keep this example in mind. And I think that sooner or later, we will face that kind of obligations. Well, in France, as I was saying, the things was maybe little more easier because the first group of the French Association Technoprog really quickly discussing between them, they agree in something, but with from the beginning some political ideas. Yeah, I have a message that says on my connection is not very stable. I hope that you can hear me. Still hear me?
We heard you with just one interruption. So if I understand the essence of your comment early on, the AFT-Technoprog met and they determined that they could agree on some essential ideas and use that as the basis for moving forward despite any differences along conventional political lines.
Yeah, you can read that, and I said it in my speech that 3 words appear as our consensus, which was pay attention to health issues, environmental issues, and social issues. And the last one was a really important one. So, okay, it gives a kind of color to the association, but it's still quite broad. And okay, if I want to be a little bit caricatural myself, I will say that the association it goes from the center right until the far left, if you want, something like that, and with yes, an average or something in the center left. But it's to answer to the question to Pavel, we haven't all the difficulties to find a consensus, because quite quickly there was this kind of consensus. But maybe I don't want to speak too much, but I don't want to forget the question that what was saying and what Pavel was saying. Remember me. One other important problems in France is the difficulty to have connection with the business world, and even the big business world. And Pavel, you also talking about the fact that someone like Elon Musk, or I don't know, you can talk about Larry Page, who had so transhumanistic point of view and public declarations at sometimes still refuse to speak about them as transhumanists. But my question is it so difficult for you to have almost contacts, discussion with them, and to explain them or to try to argue in front of them why it could be so important to promote transhumanism, or even indirectly to help the transhumanist movement? Because I think that we have arguments to try to convince them. What can you answer to me?
Well, thank you for those insights. I think there is definitely a lot of valuable observation here to consider. And it's true, we can discuss these ideas with individuals who don't explicitly identify as transhumanists, but may be willing to engage us in conversation. I think in those cases, it's just a matter of getting access to those individuals. Aubrey de Grey has lamented to me before that he sees, for instance, Mark Zuckerberg or Larry Page and Sergey Brin pursuing projects on life extension and curing all diseases in the 21st century. And yet, for whatever reason, they haven't reached out to consult with Aubrey de Grey. And Bill Andrews has had similar concerns where sometimes he can get a meeting or a conference call set up with an entrepreneur, but some of these people who are multimillionaires or billionaires, they are very set in their ways. There are certain ideas, certain tactics that have led them to accumulate vast fortunes, and they tend to therefore have a very high opinion of their initial hunches about a particular subject. And so if there's someone who is more scientifically educated about an area, it may still be difficult for that expertise to reach the entrepreneur, the business person who could really help financially. And I think there's a similar issue with the Transhumanist Party. It's almost like one has to have widespread recognition first to get that kind of notice from these leading figures. But I think if we kind of work our way around the edges, have more communication with people in that general community, eventually this kind of recognition may happen. But I do believe it will be a process that will take some years. Now, your observations regarding the history of the ecologically oriented parties in France is quite interesting as well. And it does seem like once an organization grows to a certain point, it almost begins to become a victim of its own success, because some of the dynamics from the mainstream begin to take hold. The Transhumanist Party, when it was founded by Zoltan, and since I became chairman in November 2016, has always strived to undertake a big tent approach. We do have our three core ideals, which focus on significant life extension, on a culture of rationality and secular values, and on preventing and mitigating existential risks. And we frame those core ideals specifically so that people from across the political spectrum could find some affinity with them and engage one another in policy discussions that transcend these trench warfare issues that occur between the right and the left. But at the same time, of course, we've had a great escalation of these right-left rivalries in American politics, but elsewhere in European politics as well over the past 5 years. And it's difficult for that not to penetrate into movements, even if those movements try explicitly to avoid that. And it's interesting because I've been in the position of essentially being the immune system of the organization and trying to defend it against these kinds of hyper-partisan infiltrations. In 2019, I had to beat back what I would largely characterize as a right-wing infiltration. And in late May, early June of this year, I had to beat back a very virulently left-wing infiltration, while at the same time communicating to the members who happen to hold right-wing or left-wing positions that they're still welcome in our organization, that it's not about their politics in the mainstream sense that I would be concerned. It's only about behaviors. So if someone is attempting to purify or cleanse the organization of views that disagree with them, that to me is a very dangerous tendency, because it gets rid of these opportunities for collaboration, for transcending partisan division, and for finding creative solutions. Ultimately, my view, and I think many transhumanists will agree with me, is that the solutions are not found exclusively on the left or on the right, or that the contemporary major political parties could solve the problems facing humanity. I think we do need to look upward toward the potential of humankind through science, technology, rationality to overcome these problems that have plagued the human condition historically. So my hope is the Transhumanist Party could remain a big tent organization, one that is welcoming to people of many conventional political perspectives, as long as they accept that premise, that this isn't going to be turned toward the right or turned toward the left, but remain transpartisan. So hopefully in the coming years, that approach will bear itself out and persist. So
yeah, just a quick commentary about that, just to precise what I was saying about how works the French organization. There is nothing written in our status who says that you were also talking about how do you have to behave. It's just the fact that because a clear majority of the first members and the people who was mainly involved have the tendency to put in front of some ideas that the other ones they agreed, so they came in the organization. And the fact is, I just see that's the persons who express, for example, I can say a clear libertarian point of view, they don't stay a lot, but that's it's just a choice. They don't probably they don't feel on their ears with the majority of the association, and so well, it's just like that. We don't try to close any door. All the doors are open, but because the people which are already there are speaking clearly, there is if I can see naturally in a kind of way, a kind of filter, maybe. That's the fact.
Interesting. So it's more of a cultural filter rather than a rules-based filter. And it's interesting to consider also the characteristics based on which one might want to have a filter. For me, it's essentially all about behavior. If somebody can be civil, if someone can engage with us constructively, then they are welcome in our organization. So creating that culture is indeed important. And I think we've made some strides in that with the people who are currently in our organization, our officers, our most active members. I think we are on our way. So now I think it's a good time to have Jean give his presentation, and then we can continue the questions from the panel as well as the questions from the audience chat. So Jean, if you unmute yourself, feel free to proceed.
Active le micro. Do you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we do.
Sure. I work in the AFT, both for international relations and in the political party. And I have planned to speak about the work we did within AFT to address the challenges of creating or not a party or a movement, as said Marc. It's very interesting to talk with you because we can find synergies between you and France. Even the landscape is very, very different because, as you said, In US, you have two parties. And in France, we have as many political parties as French people. That means we have something like 60 million of political parties in France. And it's the same as said Marc, it's the same in AFT. We have a lot of different feelings with the politics. But we are very lucky, and candidates or parties are very interesting to have a lot of people voting for them. So it's the right time for AFT to develop some argument and to meet politicians in order to make the voice and the thinkings of transhumanism moving ahead. In addition to that, we will have in 2021 local election, I would say election for governors like in US. And it is another opportunity for us to talk with the candidates and to ensure that they understand properly the transhumanism. Because as said Marc, it's very clear that contrary with US, in France, it's absolutely not well understood what is transhumanism, and election is the right time to talk about it. You know, French, we did revolution few years after US, but we like politics, we like to talk, we like to debate, even we like to fight. So this time is very useful for us to make our ideas discuss among the country. As you know, as shown by Marc, our association is very small, but it could be a very good opportunity to increase the number of members, because there are a lot of similarities between ecological party and AFT or transhumanism movement was or were very, very small. So even we are not so many, if we make this comparison, we could have some opportunities to increase the number of members of the AFT. And it's the case because the numbers of our members is growing slowly, but it's growing. Second point of my presentation is very simple. You know, it's 3 slides, and so it's okay. It's about the proposal. We have split the proposal we would like to address. We split it in 8 chapters, and the rank of the chapters is very important. We start by education, after democracy, technology and science, health and longevity, environmental issues, economy, at last but not least, universal rights, or yes, human rights, which are very important because probably all the artificial intelligence will have to cope with the international human rights. Last point, among all these topics, and I speak under the control of Marc, as we have people from right, center right to far left. We have not been able yet to finalize our position. And it's a job we have till next year in order to find a common roots among all of us and to have a proposal which fit with all of us. That's it for me. If you have question,
Yes,
I like
thank you, Jean, for your presentation. And now let's open up the floor for questions. I know David and Charlie, you haven't had the opportunity to ask questions yet. So if either of you would like to start.
Well, I think both presentations were very enlightening and very interesting. I really enjoyed that. I will, I don't necessarily have questions, but I can speak to something with regard to some of the prominent people or well-known people that are in scientific or organizations that appear to be transhumanists, but they don't necessarily come out and say they are. For example, as many of you know, I'm friends with Ray Kurzweil, and Ray likes to stay out of politics. So he's not about to necessarily become a member of anything like our party that's called the United States Transhumanist Party because it's a political organization. At the same time, one of the reasons he doesn't necessarily come out and say that he's transhumanist either is because he's got his own title, which is singularitarian, which is almost the same thing anyway. I mean, if you read his books, that's why I call myself a singularitarian, but I'm also a transhumanist. It overlaps. And to that point, I attended a post-human summit in New York last year, hosted by Francesca Ferrando, and she's a philosophy professor at New York University, and she is one of the major proponents of post-humanism. And in fact, I attended it there, and so did Denora Delphine. We were both there, and we all had dinner with her, with Francesca and others, and we discussed about transhumanism and post-human. And there's really no difference. I mean, really, there isn't. I mean, I almost saw no difference. The more we talked, the more we agreed. It was just like we just have different words. I know that was something that we discussed earlier, or was discussed earlier in this conference. So I mean, I understand that there's different organizations, as was just mentioned, that you've got millions of people with a million different parties in France. There are a lot of people with different ideas here with different titles, but with regard to the transhumanist or post-human or singularitarian, they're all kind of very, very similar. There's the distinctions, and I think as we progress into the future, there'll be almost no distinction because we're all trying to do the same thing. Now, one more thing I'll mention with regard to politics. You mentioned about Elon Musk, for example. Well, one of his, and again, there's another guy who has never said he's anything. But one of his good friends is Peter Thiel. Now, Peter Thiel, he's in fact the biggest investor, private investor in all of Musk's companies. They are obviously friends from the PayPal days, and he's a billionaire too. And Peter Thiel, by all definition, is a transhumanist because he's a member of Alcor, and he wants to, and all he talks about is life extension. He's basically, that's his only vision. However, he also, and I don't know this personally, so I can't say it for sure, but I know that he's not endorsing the Transhumanist Party, to my knowledge, but he did, endorse the Republican Party. And I believe, from my understanding from talking to other people that do know him, it's more about the fact is that it's a major party and that he can get things accomplished by going through a Republican Party than he could possibly through us. And his goal in endorsing the Republican Party wasn't because he really believed in Trump. I know that, but what he was trying to do was influence the FDA so that they could approve treatments that would bear out ways for life extension. So I think this is part of the this is part of the, this is a problem, as we talked about. We have a country in the United States here where it's a duopoly. It becomes very difficult for a third party like ourselves to really get any traction, and it's frustrating for us. But it also becomes apparent to some of these people that are prominent that just don't see an avenue for any substantive changes to come, because we're not even able to get into that, break that duopoly. So they end up going to, like as Thiel did, to the Republican Party, even though Republican Party doesn't stand for a lot of what he believes personally. So anyway, that's what I just wanted to interject, because I think there's relevance there. And I think that by the way, I am excited to see that France has such a powerful interest in transhumanism, to the point that they have a Luddite people coming after him. Like Gennady said, we don't have that. I don't want that, but it just tells you that there's a passion there. I think, unfortunately, in the United States, we have a lot of people that vote here. Well, I mean, we have a lot of people interested, but we don't have a lot of people that vote. Sometimes there's apathy here. Sometimes our voting percentages are really low, considering the United States and the power it kind of wields throughout the world. But anyway, that was what I wanted to just interject.
Yes, indeed. Jean, you had a response.
I have a question. How many members do you have in the U.S. party, U.S. Transhumanist Party? How many members do you have?
We have about 2,700 at present.
Okay. Spread all over the U.S. or mainly in California and East Coast, or you have all over the states?
They're spread all over the world. We are unique in that we allow individuals from any place on earth to become allied members. So about 30% of our members are outside of the United States, about 70 are within the United States, and California has a few hundred members, but they're certainly not the majority.
Okay. Okay.
Another question from my side in your direction. So with the U.S. Transhumanist Party and following the example of Isvan, you choose to try to act as an independent party. But are there other peoples, like you was talking, Charlie, you was talking about Peter Thiel, but can you say, are there some or lots of other transhumanists who are trying to act inside the Democrat or the Conservative Party? Are you aware of how many, if it's the case?
Well, the one person I'm aware of trying to do that is Zoltan Istvan himself. So after he ran for president in 2016 with the US Transhumanist Party, he decided to, in 2018, try to run as a libertarian for the governor of California. And then in 2020, he ran in the Republican Party primaries challenging Donald Trump. But he knew that he wouldn't be able to defeat Trump. It was just a bit more of an open playing field because Trump was the presumed Republican nominee. So other people were not as willing to contest him. I think 3 people decided to become serious contenders to Trump, and Zoltan was one of them. But his goal there was also spreading awareness just through different channels, through the Libertarian Party, through the Republican Party. And those are different tactics. One could even see them as part of a broader strategy, which is to use the field of politics in order to draw attention to the ideas of transhumanism and get transhumanism associated with technological progress and improvement of human well-being in the minds of the public. So Zoltan has been the biggest advocate for that kind of latter approach, but I think he's more of a pragmatist in the sense that he does not wish to stick with one political party in particular. He's happy to switch political parties, which he does quite frequently, whatever he thinks is instrumental to advancing transhumanist ideas. But as the US Transhumanist Party, of course, we embody a very specific branch, let's say, or subset of that broader strategy, which is to try to make inroads as an independent political party. But ultimately, I think we're all striving toward the same outcomes in the world, and hopefully in 20 or 30 years, politicians of all political parties are going to say, of course, I'm a transhumanist. Now, I might be a Republican transhumanist or a Democratic transhumanist or a socialist or a libertarian transhumanist, but I'm a transhumanist. And that, I think, would be a world in which everyone would be uplifted.
Yeah. Nothing about the other side, for example, inside the Democratic Party. Are you aware of peoples who are actively trying to do the job?
Andrew Yang is close. He doesn't declare himself as transhumanist, but in the last Democratic primary debate, he was probably the only one I heard on stage that actually said, who spoke to the fact that automation is going to replace all of our jobs at some point, or a lot of them. He kind of spoke, and then of course he spoke to, I mean, his whole platform was about universal basic income, which is part of our platform. So he came pretty close. I mean, as far as an actual transhumanist, but again, he hasn't come out and said it to my knowledge. Maybe he has. Maybe Gennady, you know about that. I don't know if he has.
I think his familiarity with the philosophy of transhumanism is a bit on a surface level. So before the US Transhumanist Party merged with the Transhuman Party, some of the original representatives of the Transhuman Party held a brief meeting with Andrew Yang, and one of their members, Keith Yu, wrote an article that is still available on the US Transhumanist Party website about that meeting with Andrew Yang, where Keith essentially explained what transhumanism meant to Andrew Yang. And Andrew Yang essentially responded, well, if you put it this way, then yes, I'm a transhumanist. So it was a matter, I think, on his part, not of fearing the term or not wishing to be associated with it, but not having had as much exposure to it yet at that time. But I don't think he would be opposed to transhumanism. I don't think he would shy away from characterizing himself as such. It just hasn't been an emphasis of his messaging.
Yeah, I think also it's good to not only focus on the big names like Andrew Yang, and I like following him and listening to what he has to say, but there's an axiom that says all politics is local. So I try to reach out to politicians that are in my local area. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. So I'll go to town hall meetings, or these days they're virtual town hall meetings, for people that have just recently running in the primary. So the US representative for the district that I happen to be in one of the major political parties was a choice between someone who is a technologist and someone who is a medical doctor. So both of them were actually quite approachable to the ideas of transhumanism. Now, I didn't ask either one of them whether they considered themselves to be a transhumanist. However, I thought it was very fortunate, or felt fortunate to me, that their answers to many of the questions that I posed to them, which were very transhumanist in origin, they agreed with. And it wasn't the, yes, if you'll vote for me, I will agree with you type of agreement. These were well thought out answers on things that had to do with life extension, that had to do with improving maybe voting by the use of using 21st century technologies, things of that nature. So I think there are some inroads to be met there. However, segue, I did have a question that had been looming, and it's about politics in France. So if you'll indulge me. we talk about the difficulties of minor parties in the United States gaining traction, and there are different ways that I and others go about doing that. But I was very envious, Mark, when you said there are 60,000 or 60 million different minor parties in France, and I understand where you're coming from saying that. If there was a French Transhumanist Party, then would you seek to ally with other minor political parties? Would you seek to ally with maybe the larger major parties? Where do you see that there would be possible advancements taking transhumanism to a bigger scale politically in France? And Marc, if you wouldn't mind taking on that question.
I let Marc answer this question.
Okay, but it could be interesting to have your opinion too. Okay, I mentioned the Pirates Party. It's clearly the party which is the closest to us because there are different ideas. Sure, when you're talking about artificial intelligence, such stuff about which they are already aware of, and we can find a connection on this kind of issues. And I think that's the general political spectrum. It's maybe something like the same like the French Association. So it could be a possibility. But on the other hand, in France, the Pirate Party never had the success they had in Northern European countries like Sweden, Finland, or Germany. In France, it remained also a really small party. And on the other hand, you know, you have these difficulties when you have a momentum and you meet or you try to meet another party. The other party can fear that you will just eat it, devour it. And so we have to take care of this kind of susceptibility. But to be more effective and practical, as I saw the things for the while with our different experiences, it seems to me that, as I told you before, that we already met some open ears in party like the Socialist Party, and people who are, you know, some guys like Jean-Louis Mélenchon. Okay, now is much more like a populist, a left populist, if you want. But historically, and from his own culture, he appears from the Socialist Party. For years, he was a senator of the Socialist Party. And on the other part, I told about this other guy, which is Jean-Louis Touraine, nowadays is a deputy of the governmental party in France, you know, En Marche, the party of Emmanuel Macron. Well, Jean-Louis Touraine for years was a deputy of the Socialist Party. I think that's the real basis, the real political base where we can find much more politicians which could be open to our ideas is there. I think that it's not a miracle if the first party in France, first of all, we will call us for discussion, and then we invite us to be present, to be publicly present to their summer university, was the Socialist Party, because it's a risk. It was a risk for them to say, okay, we have no problem to invite the French transhumanists. And it seems that there was right. They haven't any problem with that. and we met other representative or other organizers of this party, with which it was possible to discuss and which was open to our ideas. Well, okay, if we appear as a party, okay, the things will be different. It is what we was talking about before. It will be a communication operation, I think. But if we want to be effective and try to convince other politicians, I think that's the how to say that, the objective. We have to try to reach the heart. Could be somewhere by there. And I say that it's not a personal position, it's just an analysis of my how I see the things in France. Now I will say a pessimistic thing is that the Socialist Party in the last years was in a very bad period of his history. With the win of the Emmanuel Macron, a Socialist Party fell, I think something like down of less than 15%, which was a party which was able to reach 36 and near 40% at the time. I didn't hear you.
Nope, please proceed.
Oh, sorry.
I don't think anyone else said anything.
But it's a pity for us that maybe the main party we will be more open to our ideas. It's not in the period of it's not in a good momentum, but it's in a period of difficulties. But we never know. No, for example, it's an old party which have important local roots. And so with the local election we just had, it take back a new breath. So we never know. We will see what could be possible.
Maybe you mentioned a Socialist Party, but we have on the right side of the center previous minister like Luc Ferry and Jean-François Copé, who wrote books about transhumanism. And if really we want our ideas to win, probably what we should do is to let one of them, which are, I would say, professional politicians, to join AFT. And doing so, we would have faster progress than if we want by ourselves to be more and more known. So my point of view from a practical approach is to try to capture one existing politician not far from our ideas and to take him as our leader for the next elections, either in the Socialist Party or in the Republican or center right. That's my idea.
Yeah, I agree with Jean in this point. We had discussed different time that we need to have maybe a Charlie Cam. We need to have people who know very well to do the job. For the while, it's sure that in our network we haven't the personality. The good personality to appear and to do this job, and maybe if we try to go in politics without this personality, maybe it could be a big risk. An explanation for the fact that we won't succeed without such a personality. And Jean maybe. Right, saying that it could be in this really specific objective, in this goal, it will be more important to have the good personality, even if from his own personal opinion, it's, I don't know, much further to the right, to the left, or up or down. But it will be much important for him to know very well to do the job.
And that's an interesting observation. I would say there are various flavors of transhumanism, or various degrees of emphasis that could be placed on ideas within transhumanism, since the scope of transhumanism is quite broad. And as long as a candidate is a good communicator, is civil and respectful and well-behaved, the degree of emphasis that individual places on one aspect of transhumanism versus another is of secondary importance, because that person is still advancing the broader field. So one of the positive aspects of our 2019 primary election was the breadth of discussion about policy and ideas. We had 9 candidates, and some of them were better behaved than others. But I would say 6 of the 9 were reasonably well behaved. And in the debates, they definitely brought out a broad range of policy positions that they took with a transhumanist focus on them. So for instance, John Carrots, who was one of the candidates, he's here in this meeting, has a great deal of expertise on energy issues and environmental issues, and a lot of good policy ideas came from him during those debates. So that was a great perspective to have. And we had Matt Taylor, who was an educator who came with his own ideas, but he had kind of independently arrived at a transhumanist perspective. And then he found the Transhumanist Party, and he saw it as a good opportunity to run and bring that perspective to the forefront. So those are just some examples. But having the right demeanor to be a candidate, I think, is crucial for achieving that broader appeal, which is why we're very pleased to have Charlie, because I think that Charlie meets all of those criteria. So now, certainly, let us go to some of the questions from our audience, because we do have quite a few, even going back to the beginning. So Jason Geringer made more of a comment than a question, but this was in response to Marc's presentation about some of the hostility that transhumanism faced in France. He said, to stop transhumanism, you would have to go back in time to stop that first guy from making a stone tool. So there is an emphasis there on the fact that the use of technology to transform the human condition isn't a new phenomenon. It has indeed been with us since humans evolved their current brain capacity. And yet a lot of people, for some reason, think that emerging technologies of this generation are somehow unusual. And yet, if you go back to how people thought about rail travel in the mid-19th century, or how they thought about open heart surgery in the 1950s, or how they thought about in vitro fertilization in the late 1970s, you'll find similar resistance. Paul Spiegel quoted Michael Corleone stating, "If nobody hates you, you're doing something wrong." So perhaps it's a good sign that transhumanism is meeting this kind of resistance. Now, Dan Elton mentions that the term immortality also carries a lot of baggage in the US as well, both among secular and religious people. And this is a good bridge into a question that I have. So France, of course, has a much longer secular tradition than some other countries, dating back to the French Revolution and, of course, the influences of the Age of Enlightenment, led to this secularism emerging. In the United States, there's a kind of polarization, and unfortunately, one party has become associated with a certain fervent religiosity. Another party has been associated with a kind of stereotyped secularism, and neither is particularly nuanced. But do you think that the secularism which is prevalent in France actually gives transhumanism an advantage, especially given the Enlightenment era roots that both this kind of secularism and transhumanism have?
I'm not so sure it's an advantage for the question of the issue of transhumanism. I think much more it I would say that it has the question in different terms, because it shows that we have all those resistance. Maybe we can expect that with this secularism, the things will be easiest. But at the end, it's not so much. And we see that the resistances came from the both parts. If I talk again about politics, we have two big sources of opposition. From the one hand, we have the religious conservatives, specifically the ultra Catholics in France, and but in the other hand, we have a big part of the left, or a big part of the green parties, the ecological members of those parties, and it's sometimes strange to see that on some quite precise points they agree between them. The Catholics, the conservative Catholics, and the progressives, ecologists on the other hand. I think that the most difficulties don't come from the right. I think that quite often the traditional conservatives are front of their own contradictions, and when they meet the really deepness of transhumanism, for example, the fact that we are fighting for life, at the end, they are obliged in some way to find another way to explain with the same words and the same beliefs that at the end it's not so bad things. Another way to say it, it's that, well, the first external organization we really came to us and tried to discuss was a Catholics organization. We have in France, after all what I've said, we have really good contacts, and we work with the Catholics University of Lille, where, in parentheses, Francesca Ferrando was present last year. We was together at a colloquium with Stefan Zornier, and they organized, the Behind Humanism colloquium in the Catholic University of Lille, all together. It's quite interesting, I think. For the little entrepreneurs who was able to discuss with, we have a union of Catholics entrepreneurs, and they call us, and I was able to intervene in their annual assembly, and it shows that a lot of them was quite open to the discussion and a lot of the ideas. On the other side, the problem I was talking with you, the the most hard people are on the left sides. Some of them are anarchists, or some of them are, deep ecologists, eventually catastrophologists. So I think that the biggest problem at the end came from people who supposedly are more secularized, than the other parts. So I return to my first answer. This specificity of France, it's not maybe not necessarily an advantage.
This is very interesting, and indeed it mirrors a lot of my observations as well, in the sense that we haven't gotten a lot of pushback from the traditionalist conservative right in the United States either, and most of the disagreements have been civil. So Dr. Fazal Rana, who is also a Christian apologist, essentially. And we had a great civil discussion with him. On the other hand, we have a lot of issues with what I call the hard left, people who are so invested in conventional partisan left-wing ideology that they see anything that differs from that as a threat. And some of them call themselves anarchists. Some of them call themselves ecologists or environmentalists, but they're not the kinds of environmentalists who just want to clean up pollution and conserve national parks. They're the kinds of environmentalists who follow Ted Kaczynski in wanting to destroy civilization. And some of them will call themselves anarcho-primitivists, for example, but it's those radical strains of the left, the militant strains, which I think have clashed with us the most. There have been strains of the right that have clashed with us as well, but those have tended to be more of the militant populist variety. And some of them also call themselves anarchists, by the way. They advocate for violent street action or very transgressive cultural expression. It seems that people who I would characterize as softly left-wing or softly right-wing are at least willing to have a conversation with us, and that conversation provides an opening. So thank you for those observations. I think it's a good time for David to provide his concluding remarks on this discussion, because I know, David, you have to go in 8 minutes, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gennady. And this discussion is going so well. I really regret needing to go in 8 minutes, but I do have another obligation. So from a concluding remarks point of view, I want to thank both our guests for coming today. This has been really quite enlightening. I really enjoy hearing about transhumanism all over the world, and it's a real treat to hear about that from the French point of view today. All too aware of the issues that we have in this country trying to bring the transhumanist message. It's encouraging in many regards to hear what's going on in France. So thank you for bringing that to us today. Really, very much appreciate that.
Indeed, thank you for those good words. Marc, go ahead.
Yes, our pleasure, and I hope that Gennady, from years at the end we haven't. I have the impression that we haven't so much occasion to discuss like we did tonight with. Yes, okay, let's say the other parts of the Atlantic. We have the occasion to work on really specific projects with Natasha, with James Hughes, etc. But not in this way. And well, I really hope that this kind of occasion will be possible again and again. You know that Didier Cornel is really happy himself to talk about longevity in France, and I hope that it will be another occasion. And if it's possible to talk about so much issues we have, yes, surely for our party it will be really interesting. So thank you so much.
Yes, indeed. And I think this has been a great conversation. Hopefully, we will be able to continue it for a bit longer, but we're always open to hosting subsequent virtual Enlightenment salons as well. And if Didier or other members of AFT-Technoprog would like to be our guests for those salons, we would be happy to set that up. I will also say that in some ways, the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated our ability to have these conversations, because now so many more of us use Zoom and other video conferencing software as our primary method of reaching other people, whereas in the past, largely international communications were in the form of various conferences that took place from time to time. Sometimes there would be email communication, but having these in-depth conversations is actually better suited to this medium rather than an in-person conference, because with an in-person conference, yes, you could attend some presentations, you might have lunch with someone, but some of those encounters tend to be more fleeting, or there's more time pressure because one has to go on to the next thing, or the encounters happen incidentally. But in this type of setting where we set aside a few hours for really in-depth explorations, I believe a lot of progress can be made. So the virtual Enlightenment salons, I think, have been great at facilitating that, and this is a great example of it. Now, while we're on the point of longevity, Mike DeVerde wanted to know, how does one say super longevity in France, and whether the words immortality and longevity and super longevity would have the same meanings, the same connotations when spoken in French as compared to English.
Well, for longevity, super longevity, we have no problems. On the contrary, really often we choose to start to speak about the different issues by those kind of terms because they are not controversial. And as I show with, if you remember, the bars, the great majority of people have a tendency to answer really positively to that kind of question. They are so proud, you know, to have a Jean Calment as the people who live the most years, and so they are really attentive. They are proud that France still have a good level in this kind of direction. So you have a general communication from the media that France have still his place about all that. I give the example of Emmanuel Charpentier or the Combat Heart, etc. But we have hopefully other examples. And so in general, you have for us, it's a really good entry to try to speak about transhumanism. And so yes, Didier do it really quite well and really often, and other between us. But as I say, the term immortality, it's a little much cautious because of what I was answering maybe already about the fact that, for example, it happens quite often that or I was in some debate or I hear some debate, and I had around me people who was trying to discuss the both or the three, the fourth person so was using the term immortality, but in reality they didn't spoke about the same thing. The one was in the religious concept, and the other was on the scientific concept of longevity, for example. And so I don't know. I have a question maybe in return. Sometimes I have the impression that, for example, in the United States, because maybe that's the secularism as not the history that we have in France, it's not so much a problem to blur those two parts of the concept, and that's so you can use the term immortality without precision, without saying if you're on the scale of the metaphysic or the religious aspect of the things, or if you are on the pragmatic and the scientific part of the things, and the discussion is possible. In France, it's quite problematic. You have to precise, or each person, it's how to say, a dumb discussion.
It seems that the French like the precision of their terms to a greater extent than Americans, in the sense that American culture and language have always been a bit more pragmatic. I often find that in conversations with Americans, the key is to get the meaning across. And if it becomes possible to really know what the other side means or intends, then the discussion can proceed. Now, that's a bit of a double-edged sword, because sometimes people who, let's say, want to misconstrue something or want to assign sinister motives will not care what sort of technical or precise language one uses to describe a concept. They'll just say, oh, but you really want to have a wealthy technocratic elite enslave everybody and hoard all the life extension technologies to themselves. And of course, no transhumanist believes that, but some people will take issue with the ideas no matter how they're expressed. And what I find is, in the United States, if one uses a qualifier like biological immortality or technological immortality, people will understand what that means. Some people choose not to use those terms, so they will use super longevity or indefinite life extension or just life extension. And in the Transhumanist Party, we are quite flexible in terms of being open to all of those terminological approaches, depending on what people individually believe to be more effective. So if they want to use immortality, if they don't want to use immortality, that's up to them, as long as they can get their meaning across. So if they say immortality, I think it's important to clarify this isn't indestructibility, because the technologies we're advocating for, at least in the near-term horizon, are not going to make people immune from automobile accidents or super volcanoes or meteors hitting the Earth. Rather, we are going to achieve, hopefully, negligible senescence or longevity escape velocity. Those are other terms that some people like to use. What's most important is to get people to be able to conceptualize what that world looks like. So this is a world where medical science and technology are so far advanced that we can repair the damage of biological aging and restore the body to youthfulness. And a component of that could also be some artificial augmentations, artificial organs that could also serve as a bridge to a longer lifespan. So what I believe is most important is to have that time window for that kind of conversation, to have some sort of opening to the discussion where one can introduce these ideas, whether one uses the term immortality or not. If the speaker can communicate with the listener and form a certain rapport, then the vision of that kind of future world can get communicated. And then there will be other objections. Some people will use the boredom argument or the overpopulation argument, but those can be fairly readily responded to and refuted as well, in my experience. It's all about, I think, the mind frame of the listener, the openness of the listener to having these kinds of discussions. So that's my impression. If anyone else on the panel wants to speak to that and how they have observed any variations in different countries or different subgroups within American society with regard to receptiveness to these terms. I know, for instance, Pavel, you've had a lot of experience with the Russian transhumanist movement, and it doesn't seem to me like specific references to immortality are problematic from a metaphysical perspective in Russia. In Russia, it's more of a kind of cultural fatalism that says, sure, these ideas are great, but life is bad now. What confidence do we have that it's going to improve? So I welcome any other remarks or observations on this. Let's see, anyone from the panel?
I know that one of our great transhumanists, Natasha Vita-Moore, does not like the term immortality at all, and she prefers indefinite lifespan because immortality means, to her, she says it means without death, and that is, you know, as you said, impossible to predict, considering that there could be things that happen. So she tends to use that phrase, and I've noticed that other transhumanists like to use the term indefinite lifespan. For me, that I understand that term and I get that phrase, indefinite lifespan. Just something about the word indefinite seems a little weird to me. You know, I like to definitely live, you know, for a long time. So
yes, two meanings of the word definite there are involved. So Pavel, it seems that you're back. Any comments on your experience with how immortality or other terms for our goals in achieving indefinite life extension are perceived in Russia?
Well, the word immortality perceived pretty good in Russia because they have a heritage of the Russian cosmism and the ideas of the internal life, even if it's not here, but somewhere there, they are very deep rooted in a culture. And in my experience, I would also avoid use the term immortality because, you know, we don't know how to solve the terminal death of the universe. So we cannot grant that we can live indefinitely long.
not yet.
Not yet. Yes, not. I agree. Not yet. At our current knowledge, understanding of the universe. But yes, if when we realize how to travel to another universe or how to rebuild this universe, that we can come back to this term. So yeah, I would say we should use term like involuntary death or yeah, we should use the term like prevention of voluntary death, something like that. Because yes, immortality, it's too universal and too impossible right now.
Well, I would hope that with billions of years, problems like the heat death of the universe won't be so daunting anymore, considering that humankind in its present form has only existed essentially for about 20,000 years, and 10,000 of those have been by far the most productive. So now I think it's a good time to go to our next question, which is from Zach Richardson. Zach asks, what is your response to those opposing our support of indefinite life extension who cite a Malthusian disaster, for instance, nonstop population growth with no death to counteract it? And we ventured into this briefly by discussing how some of these hard left movements, who also tend to be more Luddite in nature, are some of the most strident opponents of transhumanism. So Marc and Jean, when you encounter those kinds of sentiments, the neo-Malthusian types of arguments, how do you respond? And what do you think are some of the most effective strategies for countering them?
Yeah, yes, it's really quite often a reaction and kind of a question or much more objections and hard objection. It could be expressed with something even a rude kind of behavior. But well, I think that we just try to stay as close as we know, close to the scientific and the rational explanations. We are just trying to deconstruct the question, to point the contradiction, which are numerous in those objections. For example, the really this question, this objection of the problems of the demography, it's a classical one. And well, I think that for us it's really easy to answer, because we have just to quote the demograph. And just saying, for instance, you had really recent studies which was showing that the worst perspective for the end of the century is probably wrong, and the middle hypothesis may be the most probable, and it's not even impossible that from the end of the century the whole world population starts to decline. So for the most people, this hypothesis for the while it's just ununderstandable, because we have so much for years and years, for dozens of years, the message that the main problem is overpopulation. So it's too much contradictory with what they have in mind. But you have just to show the numbers. You have just to show these studies, and it starts to. It's like a sand, or something starts to go wrong, goes wrong, and you can see sometimes in the eyes of the people that, oh, okay, maybe things are not that, like I was thinking, and I have to try to understand those things differently. I think that's the way we are trying to work in general. But saying that, I know that kind of it is my way of working, because probably it's my personality that to use rational explanations, but at the same time I know that it's not maybe the most quickly effective way of working, and so between us, we have other spokespersons For example, I really like the way one of our member, which is Guillem Velve Casquillas, it's a French, Spanish entrepreneurs. It's a multi-entrepreneurs. It has a different startup in the biotechs, and he explained the things quite differently. He tried to explain the things with much more images, videos, and so probably his answer will be different than mine. But okay, I think that's there are different way to answer to those objections, and yes, every one of us can do a part of the job. So there is no kind of answer.
Yes, thank you for that response. And I do think for a lot of people, this issue, this concern about overpopulation, is a matter of having obsolete information. Largely, people remember the very fearful rhetoric and some of the literature that was published on the subject in the late 1960s, early 1970s, after the world had had a baby boom and population increased dramatically by essentially several billion within the span of 2 decades. And some people, like Paul Ehrlich of the population bomb fame, thought that this would continue indefinitely. And yet we've seen with the development of much of the world industrially, technologically, educationally, birth rates are falling everywhere to the point where they are below the replacement rate in most Western countries now. And as a result, I think if a lot of people were to be made aware of that, their concern would be reduced. I found in discussions where I bring that up, the concern does get reduced. It does not get altogether eliminated because people will say, but if people stop dying today, we would reverse that trend, to which I would respond that the rate of birth actually impacts the overall population to a much greater extent than the rate of death. And indeed, if everybody stopped dying tomorrow, we would still have a lower rate of population growth given the birth rates of today than existed in the 1950s and early 1960s during the baby boom. So that's another way of taking that argument a little bit further and perhaps dealing the final blow to the concerns about overpopulation. That if the most extreme scenario envisioned by these people happens, we still would be in a situation that the world has adapted to already.
Yeah, I didn't answer maybe precisely. I don't know if in the question the question was just how did we respond, or in general, or if the person wants the clear answer, because I didn't give your answer, the clear answer. But for instance, one of us stakeholder had make a video, Alexandre Technoprog exactly, made a video in which he had made the exact calculation to show the difference between a population with fecundation rates of 2 children by woman with infinite lifespan, and a population with a fecundation rate of 2.1, and with the kind of life expectancy we have nowadays. And you show the curves. And you immediately, you really quickly understand that the problem, it's not even if you want to say immortality or immortality, the problem is the fecundation rate and nothing else.
Yes, indeed. And actually, if after the Salon you could send us a link to this video, it would be most interesting to watch and also to share as part of our toolkit of resources to help people see some of these comparisons visually in addition to hearing the arguments. So
absolutely. If I can say, generally, I think that just what you say, it's could be an important part of the work we have to do in the coming month.
mm-hmm. Yes, yes, because we've each developed certain resources that I think would be useful if expanded to a broader context. And this kind of exchange of information will give us an idea of what exists out there already that could be persuasive to the general public and advance our work. So yes, I completely agree with that. Now, Zach Richardson also had a question with regard to the narrative you gave about the history of the ecological parties in France. And he wants to know if you could elaborate on what you meant by left-wing versus right-wing ecology. How do those branches of the ecological movement differ from one another?
Well, the first answer coming to my mind is that they choose different alliances. The most part in France, I speak about the situation in France clearly. The greatest part in the 80s tried to make alliances with left parties, especially the Socialist Party. It was quite clear that at the same time, when immediately when the ecologists, specifically the Green Party, started to have some results, they knew a phenomenon of how do you say that, entrance. You know, a lot of activists from the left enter the Green Party, trying to grab it to the left and even to the far left. And in a part, they succeed at this time. In parallel, the part of the activists, of the ecologist activists who didn't agree with these trends, first of all, try to build their own party, which they call at this time, they try to stay up-wingers, but they didn't succeed, and really quickly they enter different party on the right of the spectrum. And after that, for quite a long time, there was only one appearing a Green Party, which was quite clearly on the left. Maybe I can say until the middle or the end of the 90s, where the first Green Party had little difficulties, and they tried to make alliances with people which was much more in the center, which was much more in favor of in economically liberal positions, and then they knew a new. They had a new momentum. Well, that means that, for example, I remember at European election they reached something like 13%. Okay. And from that time, it stay by there. That means an alliance between. Actually, the name of the French Ecologist Party is still Europe Ecologie, European Ecology, Les Verts, the Greens. But it means that there is a part which are still the Greens, which was traditionally more on the left, and the other part, which is Europe Ecologie, European Ecology, which is the part which is more open to liberal economy. And well, okay, now the actual momentum is certainly quite different. because I think that it's consequences of all the fact that a lot of people are now aware of the danger of the climate crisis, the biological, the crisis of the biodiversity, etc., etc. So they now the things are very here, very present, and so the most people thinks that it's better to give power to the real ecologists than all the parties, because now everybody in France, almost everybody, it's supposed to be ecologist. You have an ecologist part of the program, even in the, I don't know, the far right or in the traditional, the conservative, etc. Everybody want to be ecologist, but much people think that to be effective, real ecologists have to be in charge. So that this is the actual momentum, I think. With that, I don't know if I have answered clearly to the question.
I think you did. I think that was a very informative overview of the developments that led to a kind of left-wing versus right-wing orientation among the French ecological parties. And it's interesting.
Generally, I take the occasion maybe to add a point which is very important for the French Association Technoprog, which is to say that at the start of this year, we end a work which take us several months to work and vote at the level of the association a text you maybe you're aware of by Didier, which we called a Viridian Manifesto. And okay, it's in French and in English on our site, on the site of the association. And it's I don't know, we try to have some and a consensual opinion or way of expression about our positions about all the environmental issues. And as I say that for Technoprog, the three pillars was transhumanism and health, transhumanism and environmental issues, transhumanism and social issues. So this part of the question for us is very, very important. And
yes, indeed.
I invite everybody to discover this document.
And I have provided a link to the Viridian Manifesto in the chat. So hopefully people will follow that link and explore that. Zach Richardson says that he would very much like to see this consensus on environmental issues. So you're going to have at least one reader from this. And I would also say this idea that everyone in France today tries to express some sort of ecological platform, some sort of affinity with the ecological movement, is a situation that we would like the transhumanist movement to be in, hopefully sooner rather than later. But if in 10 years or 20 years, politicians are saying, I'm a transhumanist, irrespective of what else they believe, and people in the general public also identify as transhumanists, that will be the kind of world we want to live in. But in the meantime, there are some risks, as you mentioned, this idea of entryism by people with more conventional political perspectives who try to change the character of the organization, try to make it more conventionally left-wing or right-wing, though it seems in the French situation, the left-wing entryism was more widespread and more successful. And I think this is a tactic that is deleterious in the long run, because it takes what is a unique set of ideas, an organization that is structured on an innovative and creative premise and tries to make it more conventional, tries to make it a tool into some existing partisan struggle, just a feeder organization into a larger set of groups and conflicts that may not really be at the core of what that original organization is seeking to accomplish. So hopefully, not just transhumanist organizations, but all organizations that are founded on some new and interesting and innovative premise can develop some sort of immune system, some set of mechanisms, whether they're more explicit rules or they're more of a cultural type of environment that would resist this kind of entryism, that would tell people essentially, you're free to engage with our organization and try to forward its goals, but do that without changing the fundamental nature of the organization and what it stands for. So I think that's a very important lesson to derive from the narrative that you gave and the examples that you provided. So now let us move on to another question that we have received. And this one is also from Zach Richardson. If you had to pick two transhumanist issues that you would like to see both of our organizations focus on, what would they be?
The US Transhumanist Party, and for the while, the French Transhumanist Association, maybe tomorrow, a kind of French political organization. It's not, I didn't think about that. Or what issue precisely could be most interest to encounter are both concentration on well, maybe, well, because really I didn't think about it previously, but I had to say that longevity may or will remain for a long time the easiest, the more logical way to go. I feel that in each country, not only the US and France, but in Great Britain, in Italy, maybe in Russia, as far as I know, the biggest organization, the more concrete organization are working on yes, say it like you want, infinitive or indefinitive lifespan, etc. So probably not only because it's important, because I can say that for my part, the issue I find more important above all is what, I don't know, in English you can say moral enhancement. I'm from the thoughts that a really long life without any moral enhancements, it's not so much interesting. I do prefer, yes, I see Charlie doing that, and I remember I heard you, Charlie, in a previous Salon, Enlightenment Salon, and you were saying something like that, and I agree absolutely. That's my personal position. But in the same time, I say that for me and with Charlie, which is your spokesperson for the presidential the election. At the same time, from a strategical point of view, I believe that we have to focus on super longevity. Yeah.
So if I could characterize your response in terms of two issues, they would be super longevity and moral enhancement.
Yes,
And
sorry, I forgot the second one, and I answer by this way.
yes, this is a subject that I think is already fascinating some of the commentators in our chat. So Zach Richardson would like you to elaborate more. Dan Elton is asking if you're talking about pharmaceuticals that increase morality or empathy, or if you're talking about more of a conceptual approach, like reasoning one's way to being more moral, or even in the future, something more dramatic like restructuring the human brain to alter perhaps some of our evolved dispositions and turn them into tendencies that are more favorable for functioning in a technological society as opposed to a hunter-gatherer society.
Yeah, I'm really talking about the scientific point of view. Okay, well, for my part, because I'm not an informatician, I'm not a biologist, I am an historian by training, you know. So, okay, I have this tendency to think about the theoretical point of view, first of all, really often, but and on this point, I think that we have to think about what is feasible practically. And I think that yes, the pharmaceutical approach is important, but I follow as close as I can different other approaches. For example, different kind of implants which are developed and okay, I don't know what exactly Elon Musk are doing with Neuralinks, but I will very like to know much more this year. I'm waiting him from before the end of 2020, he said. But at the same time, for example, I don't know if you're aware about an experiment which is supposed to start clinical first level experiences in Paris at the Institute of Mind, if I translate Institut du Cerveau in Paris, with Howard Newton. Howard Newton, which is from Harvard. But he chose because I think that he studied 1 year in Paris, and he chose the Institut du Cerveau to develop the kiwi implant with his startup NI2. You're aware of it. And for me, I think that is really, really important and interesting to follow that, because it will be the first implant which is able to be controlled without difficulty or problems of infection, because it's so small. You haven't to make any hole in your skull. You can make the implantation by the nose, and it's so small. It's nano manufactured. So I think that we have that there. Something really, really interesting. And sure, he is obliged to say that, first of all, this implant will be used for illness like neurodegenerative illness. But when you hear talking about his perspectives, it's clear for himself that he is speaking about moral enhancement. So I think that's yes, with a little much more money, which with a little much more possibility to speak about clearly, to speak about transhumanism and not about Alzheimer, etc. It's really important to fight Alzheimer, but we are still blocked by this context that made that nothing is possible outside of medicine. And I think that's politically we have to fight in this direction. If I can, I don't know, my answer is starting to go away, but for example, when I spoke to the Ministry of Defense, or in the Ministry of Health in France, that was probably the main point of what I was trying to say. That is that we have to have a paradigm shift in this model politically. And as I say, it's interesting to, you know, the answer of the reaction of the audience was, it was not, I didn't receive any tomatoes, no shouting. It was something like a silence, and it wasn't bad, because I could understand that people was just thinking about it. So yes, it's just the answer, moral enhancement, but with practical goals and short terms, maybe short term goals.
Yes, indeed. And this is a fascinating subject to consider. Of course, in the Age of Enlightenment, a lot of philosophers believed that through the application of systematic rationality, humans could be enhanced morally. They didn't yet conceive of pharmaceutical interventions to do that, or implants to do that. They thought they could do that just through reason and redesigning society and the institutions of society. And to some extent, it worked. Steven Pinker documents some significant improvements in his book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, with regard to, for instance, the rates of violence in various societies, or perceptions of slavery, or perceptions of various forms of institutionalized inequality, like oppression of women and minorities was considered routine and part of the natural order for much of human history. And yet, after the Age of Enlightenment, and I would say because of the ideas of the Age of Enlightenment, this concept of universal human rights, universal human dignity, became well established. And so everywhere in the world now, a person would be ashamed to advocate for this kind of oppression. And people at least have to say that they're in favor of universal human rights. Even dictators like Kim Jong-un still have to pay lip service to the idea of being democratic. It's the Democratic People's Republic of Korea that he is the president of. So this does display a certain shift in terms of moral values. And yet, of course, there are still some grievous flaws that we see in human behavior, and not just individual behavior, but the behaviors of crowds and collectives and systematic errors that occur in entire societies. And a thought that has occurred to me on numerous occasions, seeing the degeneration of the quality of public discourse in many mainstream spheres over the past 5 years, is that it may be that this form of moral enhancement is coming up against certain hard boundaries set by human biology, and the next step would need to be some sort of combination of biological and technological moral enhancement that could help us overcome those kinds of boundaries as well. So definitely a subject of conversation that we could speak for many hours on, and hopefully we'll have the opportunity to do that over the coming months and years. But I think for now, it would be a good occasion to begin with some closing remarks from each of our panelists, and then, as is our practice, we will have our guests provide the last words. But for now, let's go to Art Ramon. Art Ramon, what are some of your closing remarks regarding this conversation?
Just had a passing thought about BCIs. And so far, what Elon Musk has promised, at least what he said, is that the Neuralink, you'll be able to listen to music, and it will provide mood enhancement. And so far, I'm not too impressed with just those few revelations he's made. But thank you, Jean and Marc, for coming and enlightening us. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. And BCI, by the way, for those who haven't heard the acronym, stands for Brain-Computer Interface. Along these lines, Dan Elton, our Director of Scholarship, has posted in the comments that direct brain-to-brain communication or telepathy could increase empathy and feelings of connection with geographically distant humans. Such tech will be enabled by BCIs, such as those being developed at Neuralink. So a great connection with Art Ramon's comments. And furthermore, I would say one has to start somewhere. So you mentioned Elon Musk's initial applications might not be particularly world-changing, but they're a start and perhaps a useful testing ground. I will also say increasing empathy through technology can be done through more recourse of services like Zoom, where we have the opportunity to connect with people from around the world. I think the past few months have been a great opportunity for transnational and transcultural discussions of a sort that would have been more difficult to have before. So thank you for bringing up that notion of increasing empathy, Dan Elton. Now we will proceed. Let's see if John Carrots is available to offer some closing comments.
Yeah, I'm here. I just wanted to say it was nice getting to hear the French point of view today. And one of my favorite places before Christmas, of course, is the Ville de Noël in Paris by the Arc de Triomphe. It's very nice. But I always like when you hear it mentioned, earlier was mentioned about how depending on the wording and how you described transhumanism, some people thought it kind of went into the magic or the that kind of a realm. And I always think it's interesting because it always makes me think of the fact that when you think of science, you know, what is our science of today is a lot of things that have been seen in the past as magic. And so I think that that's not necessarily a bad thing when they view it that way, because we hope that the science that we're thinking about is bringing us into a new age, and it can be things that at one time we thought of as magic. So I think that might be actually a good thing, that sometimes people have that point of view, although it might also hold us back. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yes, indeed. It reminds me of Arthur Clarke's famous third law: any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So thank you, John, for those remarks. Now let's go to Charlie.
Yeah, I want to thank Marc and John both for a great discussion and an enlightening one as well. I will mention, we mentioned about overpopulation before. I think it needs to be remembered, and this is something that I find in agreement with transhumanists, posthumanists, singularitarians. Let's not forget that we're all thinking about that idea of merging with technology, which means, you know, the problem with overpopulation has always been about resources. Now, as we merge with technology, and we're talking about the neural implants, well, that neural implant can not only make us smarter, but by being smarter, we should be able to attain higher levels of empathy and compassion, and thus better morality, not to mention the better communications. But as it continues, and as Ray Kurzweil predicts in his books, we will merge with technology more and more, that we become more of a technological substrate more than a biological one. And as we become more of a cyborg or a robot or even mind uploading, the idea of overpopulation will be kind of moot. I mean, we won't even need the resources that we need as humans. So, you know, whether the discussions about the resources, whether there's enough food, well, we may not need it. We might be able to absorb energy right from the sun or something else. Or with regard to space, I mean, if you're a robot, you can be any size, or you can upload to a machine, so you could be a nanobot for that matter. So all those things go away once we get to a more further level in this trajectory that we're all talking about. And based on Kurzweil, that's 25 years from now where the singularity is going to hit. So it's really possible that a lot of these things will happen long before we ever get to a problem with overpopulation. The other thing I wanted to mention was, now there is a slim chance, it's very slim, that I may not win the presidency of the United States of America, and it's slim. But if I don't, and if Trump wins, then I may want to take Marc up on being, you know, that personality that could run for president in France. I'll be happy to go. I'll be happy to go there, you know, and see what I can do to maybe win there. But anyway, just wanted to say thanks again for you guys coming on to talk today. It was really great.
Yes, indeed. Well, it'll be an interesting state of the world if in 2021 Donald Trump is president of the United States and Charlie Cam is president of France. What interesting geopolitical situations are going to occur as a result of this? Maybe we could turn France into transhumania if that happens.
I want to see that.
Indeed.
Charlie, you're welcome when you want.
I'll let you know on November 4th. It may run longer right now. He's trying to shut down the postal system, so we'll see.
We will use Zoom and such stuff, and it won't be no problem to have your campaign in France from your home.
Thank you. I would love to. I'll start practicing my French now. Actually, I won't have to. I'll get an implant, and I'll be able to speak French instantly. So that's not a problem. There's a company, I mentioned it before. They're called Alter Ego. Check them out. They actually are developed. In 2018 they came over that where it's a sticker. You put it on and you can hear the cloud and you can translate. It's coming. So yeah, I'm gonna start, you know, practicing my French stuff. I'll be out there soon.
Yes, a universal translator of the kind that was available in Star Trek would also do a lot for the ability to improve empathy and communication across cultures. So now let us go to Pavel. Pavel, what are your concluding thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first, I want to restate what I said about immortality word. I would use it to attract attention and ignite conversation. And during conversation, I would be more rational and explain that what we actually want and what we actually mean. Second, I'm really glad that AFT, as Jean mentioned, has a plan about universal rights of sentient beings, such as future AI. The subject is very close to my heart. And thank you so much, Marc and Jean, to show up and enlighten us. And I'm looking forward to more broader and deeper collaboration between USTP and AFT and other European and non-European transhumanist organizations. Thank you.
We thank you again for the occasion. I really thinking about the different things we can propose to share, and you know that Leonid is working on this, and we was talking about a specific project. If it was there, he's probably he had told us more specifically about the ideas our little team had in this direction, and it will be probably really interesting, not only for France and United States, but for every organization in the world, or at least where we have a transhumanistic organization. A little parenthesis, I am actually in contact, at least after more than 10 years living in Greece. I am actually in contact with a small team of Greek transhumanists, and they are talking about have their first event, and their first organization, but they are starting from just zero. And such a little group absolutely need tools. And I think that we are able to propose them some tools, some experience that can help them to go faster than us, not losing a decade, for our example, to reach the level we are, but in their country to go really faster. And I'm afraid that for the while, the transhumanist community wasn't exactly able to propose that kind of tools to the other organizations. I remember well that in 2017, when we organized with Didier in Brussels the Transvision, it was one of our ideas. But at the end, you remember, Gennady, you sent us a presentation of the US Transhumanist Party at the moment. But even we had different workshop on different issues, and the idea was to be practical, but unfortunately, at the end, almost nothing went off this discussion. Only papers, and the papers was lost. And I think it's a pity. And I think that maybe with this momentum, we have a new opportunity to try to build those tools and to share them. And so, yes, I take the remark of Pavel to remind that we have this kind of projects, and we have to work on it.
Yes, indeed. And the US Transhumanist Party, of course, invites this kind of collaboration. I think we have an infrastructure now to facilitate it, which is far superior to what existed 3 years ago. I'm even thinking of the depth of this interaction as compared to the video presentation that I sent you for Transvision 2017, because there was only so much that could be done from a technical perspective to present virtually. So I fit in the information that I could in a 10-minute presentation. But imagine in future conferences having this kind of interactive format as well, with participants potentially from anywhere around the world. And I will also say the US Transhumanist Party is open to membership from all over the world. And we do invite you to join. We invite everyone from AFT-Technoprog to join. It is absolutely free, so no worries from a monetary perspective. And I just posted the link within the chat as well, transhumanist-party.org/membership. And hopefully with that kind of infrastructure, we can also hold more formal deliberations about issues that will ultimately be reflected in the US Transhumanist Party platform. But in our platform votes, we've always invited our international members to join in and contribute. Didier, for instance, has contributed some ideas and comments in the past as well. So that would be a great way to pursue further collaboration also. Now, Jean, do you have concluding thoughts for this discussion?
Yes, I have two remarks. First one is I am member of the US party, Transhumanism US party. I am member of this party. And the second point is when we could have this type of exchanges on a periodical basis, like once every quarter or once every semester, I don't know. But I think would be good to close this meeting with a tentative date after Didier presentation on the 23rd, but to try to find a next date for having these type of exchanges. That's it.
Yes, yes, I think it's a good idea. And we hold these virtual enlightenment salons on a weekly basis, every Sunday, which is 1 p.m. Pacific time. Now, we do have a time difference here. So right now, it is a 9-hour time difference. So that's a fairly late start in France, but it depends on if you could accommodate that. Really, anything past this month is open for us right now in terms of the weekly virtual enlightenment salons. So if either of you would like to participate, bring in some of your other members, we could set up specific topics or subtopics of conversation as well. I will leave it open to you, even if you want to have something for one of the salons in September, we could arrange that.
Gennady, if I can, yes, have another ideas or remark on this point. I don't know if Jean was just talking about the way that the salons by US Transhumanist Party, the Enlightenment salons works, or to speak with the French organization, or to speak in general with transhumanistic organizations and on specific organizational topics. That is what Leonid was trying to do with the people he contacts on Discord. You know that he was and is still in contact with people from Russia, specifically a different person from Russia and from Belarus, from Romania. Well, I don't know if it's just because he himself is speak Russian, and so naturally, in a way, he had more contacts with people from Eastern Europe. But anyway, David Wood is, for example, on this Discord, and Pavel came in more recently, and yourself, if I remember well. But anyway, the important point, it's not the tool. I think it's the goal. So, do you think it's it will be interesting for the US Transhumanist Party to use?
I believe we lost you, Marc.
Oh.
You're back. Just as you were asking your question, we lost your connection. So if you could repeat that, I would appreciate it.
Do you think it will be interesting for US Transhumanist Party to give access to the tools you know well to use, for example, the salons, to help the different organizations at a world level to share information, share experiences, and try to be constructive together?
Yes, I think it's a worthwhile discussion to have with regard to how we've been able to develop this format for the virtual enlightenment salons, what technologies we use, what logistical techniques and insights we've learned. So, of course, we have a lot of great assistance behind the scenes. Pavel is doing the live streaming right now using OBS, Open Broadcasting Software, and David Shoemaker made this Zoom meeting available, so I'd like to thank them for doing that. And that is a conversation we could have as well, possibly a technical meeting that won't be live streamed, but would be more of a training session of sorts. And I would say the three of us, Pavel, David and myself would be the people to host this kind of session so that we can cover the technical perspective as well as some of the insights that we have learned from hosting these events. So,
yes, I'm more than happy to participate and share the any experience and knowledge I have, and yeah, I will be happy to be part of the more project-oriented meetings.
excellent, excellent. So now, Marc, if you have any final thoughts to conclude our conversation today regarding anything that's been said, please proceed.
Well, I think that we say a lot, and it showed for me two things. First of all, that yes, maybe we have nowadays this opportunity to better share our experiences. We are just experienced it now. And I think it's really positive. I really think what I think that other organization can have the opportunity you give us today. I really invite you to do the same with the Italian Transhumanist Association, the Spanish, etc. And yes, we will have the opportunity to hear each of these experiences. And the other point is that, well, probably United States are still some steps front of those different European, for example, countries. I'm not able to say. I will be really interested hearing much more about the Russian experience. I don't know, for example, how are the level of exchanges between the American movement and the Russian movement. I have some ideas because I had the occasion to encounter Danila Medvedev, for example, and others. So I have a little ideas, but I have the impression that the relations and the contacts could be much more effective, and you can have more often discussion between us and all together. But for the way it's quite clear that from France we have the tendencies, the tradition. I don't know, it's histories like that to look first of all toward the West. So we will follow Charlie and all the party very closely in the coming month, and waiting to still learn about you for the next step. Thank you very much for all that.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Marc, and thank you, Jean, for attending, for sharing your insights with us today. We have learned a lot about the history and the work of AFT-Technoprog, as well as about the political evolution of various ideas within France, the reception of transhumanism in France, and promising opportunities for future collaboration. And we've discussed quite a few fascinating subjects along the way. This is what these virtual enlightenment salons are intended to cultivate, and I certainly hope that they will trigger the same kind of progress in the realms of technology and society, enhancement of our longevity, as well as moral enhancement that the 18th century Age of Enlightenment produced. So thank you very much to Marc and to Jean. Thank you to everyone who attended this salon, who partook in the chat, and now live long and prosper.